tell the world who you are and what you do?
My name's René. I've been training protection dogs since 2008, and I've been a Donovan Pinscher enthusiast since about 2005, 2006 when I came across the breed as a teenager. I'm a Donovan Pinscher enthusiast. I've trained in French ring sports since 2008, so I've been decoying a couple thousand dogs. And I had one dog that came to my club with a Donovan Pinscher, and it left a lifelong impact on me and changed my perspective of working dogs. I had a kind of an idea I wanted to kind of touch on was a conspiracy against the working dog in general, that kennel clubs have been infiltrated for the past hundreds of years to destroy the working integrity of our working breeds. Because a man without a capable dog is less than a man. A man who doesn't have a capable dog to hunt with, to protect himself with, is a vulnerable man. A man that's more easily to control, and a woman as well. Mm-hmm. So I believe that there's been this conspiracy to try to destroy our working dog breeds. If society collapses, what's going to happen to man and woman? Right? I mean, before the Industrial Revolution, we relied on dogs. If it wasn't for dogs, civilization wouldn't exist. Our society structures wouldn't exist. The industry wouldn't have been able to be industrialized if it wasn't for dogs. So I really think that if we were infiltrated by some evil power that wanted to do us harm, that they would target our dogs. And, I think a lot of people in the working dog community could agree with that. And, not many people really talk about this, conspiracy that's actively been destroying our working dogs for the past hundreds of years. And I think a lot of people in our generation can remember, a few decades ago, the difference in dogs, their capabilities, their drive, and I think that there's this stark difference with dogs from the 90s and 80s, and old fellas talk about how hard and how tough dogs were, and I think that the culture of dogs has changed. Our etiquettes around dogs have changed, where it's supposed to be a dog's supposed to be clear-minded and stable in public and friendly with everyone. But it's also supposed to be this machine that's going to do X, Y, Z and all these things that people dream of, and go to dog sports and go to dog shows and be this best dog that everyone imagines. And, a lot of people spend a lot of time and money training these dogs when, 150 years ago, there was no professional dog trainers. Mm-hmm. There were farmers, and, they were livestock farmers, and they threw their dog in the situation. They hoped their dog would guard their livestock. They hoped the dog would move the livestock, but they weren't dog trainers. A man hunts, he'd throw the dogs and hope that they'd hunt. If they didn't hunt, they were culled. They weren't worth it to feed. And, we've lost that working ability in many breeds of dogs. And I think, lots of, young coming up dog men are, looking around at the dog world, and they don't really realize from a historical perspective the significance of the changing of temperaments throughout the decades and how much that's impacted our general dog populations. That a lot of dogs have been lost. The working ability has been lost in history, that, people nowadays don't really, realize that there's dogs that were in the past that have been lost, and it's hard to find temperament like that, because people haven't been breeding for it. Mm-hmm. It's like when you were a young kid reading about history, and in the history books they talk about these legions of dogs. That there would be, a division of men with, hundreds of dogs on chains, mastiffs, that they would have in the army, and they'd feed all these dogs, and all these dogs were working properly. They were spoken about and written about in countless battles and epics and stuff in history. And where can we find dogs of war nowadays? Mm-hmm. One thing that I think about is, the last war where the United States called on its own citizens to send their own dogs to the war effort, were sent to Vietnam. Mm. I mean, could you imagine the United States government calling on American people to send their dogs to the front lines? How many of them would succeed? But when you look at it from a historical perspective, in World War II, hundreds of dogs were sent to the front lines from many of the Allied powers, and many of those dogs worked out, and they performed, So I think that we've lost this trainability and this workability and this drive in many dog breeds. Not just one particular breed, but it's broad. You know. Mm-hmm. So I think that it comes to the Donovan Pinscher and how it was developed. I'm not here to speak for Mr. Donovan. Everything that I'm speaking on is I've heard from him directly over the years of mentoring under him, watching his videos and reading a lot of the stuff that he's written on the internet. And so Mr. Donovan was one of the youngest Schutzhund titled individuals in the United States in the mid-'70s. His father and him kind of pioneered Schutzhund in the early days of the 1970s with a number of handful of other individuals in the United States. And they organized a few seminars. Mr. Donovan's father served in Austria and in the army, and he saw many of these European-style training in Schutzhund. And so when he came back to the United States, he wanted to get one of these dogs for his family. So Mr. Donovan grew up with working dogs around, and by the age of 13, 14 years old, he had bred his own dog, titled his own dog, and was like the head training director and helper of his own club at 14 years old. 17 years old, he'd accomplished quite a bit. He was a professional dog trainer, and he had a canine security business. He grew up in Long Island, New York, in New York. So he had a canine security business offering security to clients in the 5 boroughs of New York, warehouses, stockyards, shipping, properties, where valuable material was kept. New York is very famous for being, a crime-ridden city. During this time, this was before the invention of, electronic security systems. So a lot of people relied on security canine businesses. So the Donovan Pinscher was pretty much developed around this business of Mr. Donovan's. Mr. Donovan never intended for these dogs to be, for the world. His only intention was for them to be kept for himself and a few of his friends. So he operated this business in New York and had a few hundred dogs of varying different breeds: Rottweilers, German Shepherds, Malinois. Mr. Donovan was also one of the first people to import Dutch Shepherds, West German Shepherds into America, and so he was proud of his dogs, and he had Schutzhund 3 titled dogs. And there was one incident that Mr. Donovan told me about that it's kind of a very impactful event for the Donovan Pinscher history. Was he was a young man walking through the streets, and he was very proud of his dog, Schutzhund 3 titled protection dog. And in the 70s, or was it? No, I guess it was in early 80s when this happened. And Mr. Donovan walked away from this incident, and it really impacted him. If you watch some of his footage that he's got, a lot of the time he will train a dog sitting, because a lot of the time when you're thinking about it from a sport perspective, who the hell's sitting in a chair on a field? When does a dog see that? So Mr. Donovan has conscientiously tried to implement this into his training methods in order for the dog to see a person in all sorts of positions, right? So that event, I think, was a very impactful thing on the Donovan Pinscher. During the time that Mr. Donovan had his canine business, he was utilizing, European herding breeds, right? First and foremost at the beginning. And there was, these dogs were developed to apprehend, search down a suspect, right? These dogs were not typically the first choice for a riot control dog, which has a different kind of need of drive, right? They would typically use like a Rottweiler or a Bouvier for those types of work, because the herding dogs just it didn't come as naturally to them. And so Mr. Donovan, had many different breeds. Like I said, he also, at some points rented out entire warehouses to house his hundreds of dogs and kennels in order to sustain this program. And so there was, young gangsters, trying to, jack these warehouses and steal the, contraband and steal, valuable items from these places. And, there was incidents where these gangsters would throw pit bulls over the fence, and they'd maul, maim, and kill these, high-level European herding dogs, right? And so Mr. Donovan had the realization that he needed to, put his two best dogs together and not have any regard for the breed and, purebredness, right? At this time in America, crossbreeding breeds was a very controversial thing, so many people frowned upon it. And Mr. Donovan, only did this for his business, right? This dog breed was designed around the canine security business. And so when you're having a canine security business, you don't need a dog to be searching and apprehending one suspect, right? Jumping underneath fences and going through, alleys and shit to find someone. Someone who's doing that kind of work needs a dog that puts on an aggressive display, has a very, has a sense of territorial dominance, right? Is socially aggressive with people, has a, an innate feeling of, wanting for people to be able to get away, stay away, to bark at them, to be aggressive, to put on a big display. And so this type of dog was more so needed than this apprehension dog. Yet these, herding dogs were more easy to train. And so Mr. Donovan came with the realization that he would cross his two best dogs together. And so he continued to do this, and he noticed that sometimes, crossing these two very different breeds, a bull and a herder together, would result in dogs that weren't better than either parent. But sometimes, when the genetics did click, they clicked better than either parent. And these are the dogs that Mr. Donovan used for future breeding. So, Mr. Donovan, continued to cross these dogs and line breed on these dogs. Mr. Donovan didn't have any formal education in breeding. He's just a lot of people who were friends with him just call him the mad scientist. He was just so obsessive with breeding since he's a little kid. Breeding snakes and mice and turtles and stuff, and he's been breeding animals his whole life. He just dreams about breeding and imagining this kind of dog in the future, in his dreams. He's just always been trying to attain this perfect dog. And so with these preliminary crosses, he was getting closer to this vision of his. And so Mr. Donovan is actually, as far as I know, is the one man to pioneer the bull and herder cross. He was the first person to pioneer this. I can't really recall, or I don't know, maybe someone can comment or add something in that, is there any other program of a bull and herder that's longer than 35 years? So Mr. Donovan Pinscher program has been, a bull and herder cross since 1989. So I don't know of any other bull and herder program that's as successful or as long-running as that. So he was the first person to kind of pioneer that. And, it takes hundreds and hundreds of litters and, countless generations. Right now, the dogs that I got are at, 21 generations of Mr. Donovan's breedings. So, or, 19 of his and 2 of mine. But, there's 21 generations of these dogs around, And Mr. Donovan's never selected for a phenotype or a look at all. That's never been any concern at all. The dogs have only and ever been selected for working ability, trainability, and temperament. Mm-hmm. So the dogs don't have a full look where they all have a standardized size and look, but you can kind of see in their faces that they have this, facial structure that, okay, that looks like a Donovan Pinscher, Mm-hmm. And so it also depends on the level of, how, line bred it is, right? Right. So, going back to the history of the breed, Mr. Donovan, started this in 1989, and through the 1990s with his canine security business, the breed was growing with his business. Then in the early 2000s, people were getting a hold of these dogs and, calling them other names and, using them and, taking the credit for these dogs. And so Mr. Donovan said, you know what, I should, name these things something, right? So he decided to name them the Donovan Pinscher after himself and kind of in admiration of the Doberman Pinscher. because the Donovan Pinscher was a dog developed to seize people and, apprehend people, right? So I think it was a fitting name. So then after, in these early 2000s, the internet really started to, gain traction. There was these band dog forum, internet kind of chat groups that were on the internet in those early days, and a lot of information was being passed around on that. Even before that, Mr. Donovan was mailing videotapes to people on VHS around the United States, promoting his breed, talking about it, showing demonstrations of the breed. And then, the early 2000s, you've seen these dogs doing a multiple array of, working venues in high-level sport work and, pack work with hogs, hunting, doing, real police canine work, detection work, and, advanced obedience. And these dogs pretty much excel in everything they do: stock work, livestock guardian work, livestock moving, all sorts of things. And so, I guess this kind of ends up going to like the mid-early 2000s when this breed was really gaining more notoriety and more attention, right? And I have I guess some people might call me a conspiracy theorist, but whatever. I have my what do you call it? My speculations. I can speculate. And so when Mr. Donovan was charged with animal abuse, and there was a lot of media attention around it, and all the news articles and all the negative things being spoken about it. And I wrote a letter to Mr. Donovan when he was in jail, just trying to say, hey, you've been my hero since I was, a young teenager, and I'd love to have a chance to train with you and meet you. And, when you get out of jail, it'd be great to meet you. And luckily, he ended up replying back to me, and, I was able to have a correspondence with him and write with him. So, that was great. I've been able to learn a lot from him. He's an amazing guy, and really, a very unique character of our time. And since I've came across him, I always thought that this guy's going to go down in history, and this breed will. As long as people can, stay together and stick together, and do this for the dogs. So Mr. Donovan was charged with 2 counts of animal abuse. And when you look at the case and you look at all these charges and everything, and what happened, Mr. Donovan wasn't clearly found guilty. He he'd still be in jail if he was. These puppies that passed away were in a completely different state, hours away from him. The logistics of it adding up to be against him, for him to be at fault, it's just not credible. It's just not there. There's not enough evidence to really say that Mr. Donovan's guilty of these accusations. And I believe that the powers that be did this and specifically targeted Mr. Donovan because they are intimidated by the Donovan Pinscher breed. Because if the American people, the Canadian people, Australian people have capable dogs like this, then they're a formidable force. Not only do they have, firearms and guns, but they got 24-hour security systems. They got personal protection for their whole family. I mean, these dogs can change society. Capable dogs like this, not just Donovan Pinschers, but any dog breed that's a capable dog, empowers the people. And I believe that the powers that be targeted Mr. Donovan to destroy his credibility, destroy the Donovan Pinscher program, so that way the agenda against working dogs would go even further. So, I've worked many dogs, and I've seen many dogs, and I'm a dog working enthusiast, and, there's nothing better than I love to see a dog bite someone and attack someone. That's just, to me, that's history in the making. Our dogs are walking historical monuments. They should be protected, like the churches and the bridges and these historical places, World Heritage Sites. But our dog breeds are not protected in the same sense, right? We might have them still here. They might still look like that breed of dog, but historically speaking, the temperament is not there, right? So I believe that there's this, conspiracy against working dogs, and I kind of, feel like the Donovan Pinscher has fallen into that, and that's why they targeted Mr. Donovan to destroy this program. So, then that kind of led to my involvement. I got involved. I've been following this breed since 2005, 2006, 2008. For years, I was writing letters to Mr. Donovan to try to train with him. He's a very private guy and only keeps to himself. And, to me, he's always been like a celebrity to me. And, it was amazing to meet him and, spend the time to get to know him. And, I got involved in about 2011 or so is when a dog named Cuddles was imported into Canada, and it was a part of my club. I was a decoy, and I decoyed for this dog for about a year until my friend sold him to a gentleman in Toronto. And then I lost touch of the dog, and he always made a big impact on me. There was no dog I've ever worked out of the couple thousand dogs I've worked that really wanted to kill me. That dog possessed this real feeling in him. You looked at him and you felt it. He really wanted to hurt me. He hated me. And, I've never worked a dog like that. He's the grandfather of my dogs, and, I'm hopefully trying to reproduce another Cuddles and try to standardize this Cuddles temperament. Because that dog was a phenomenal dog, one of the best dogs I've ever worked and trained in my life. So I took about 6-7 years trying to search for that dog in the working dog communities in Toronto, trying to find him, and I never could find him. And then about at the 7th year or so, I ended up, this girl joined my club, and she said she's talking to some guy who was selling a Bull Serrant, and he had a Donovan designer dog. And I said, what the hell do you mean, a Donovan designer dog? You mean a Donovan Pinscher? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, fuck, give me this guy's name. I'm going to call him. So I got this guy's name, ended up calling him. He was totally, taken off by, who the hell are you calling me? And I knew what kind of dog he had, and he was like, what the fuck? It took me 9 months or something to convince this guy to breed his fucking dog. Finally, he bred his dog. I told him I got a friend of mine who's got a dog that's going to be a perfect breeding and coordinated this shit. He's 4 hours away. Drive to him, breed the dogs, and fucking sell me a dog. He did everything. He was a stand-up guy. He was amazing. Got the whole litter, whelped and ready. Everything he did went above and beyond. He sold me the dog, my dog Launch, and I've, been raising my dog, training her in a completely different style than I've ever raised any of my other 23 dogs, okay? I pretty much completely listened to everything Mr. Donovan told me to do on how to raise this dog because, he developed this breed and he knows it more than anyone. So I totally listened to him, took all of his advice, and raised Launch in that respect. So, I did a few little training sessions with her at, 8 to 12 weeks, and then had a break until she was 5 months old, had 2-3 training sessions at 5 months old, gave her another break, just made sure she had a good bite, and, let her just be a dog and rest. I didn't train her anything other than that, and literally, we just tested her, man. We just tested. We just fucking threw her at a guy and see what she does. Is she going to attack the guy? Holy fuck, did she ever attack the guy? Run and goes in right away, no hesitation, fucking right in and attacks. No training at all. Completely genetics. And that's something that you'll hear Mr. Donovan say over and over again in his videos over the years. He'll say, this dog's got no fucking training. It's the first time he's seen a decoy. First time. And you're like, really? That dog's a year old. How has it not ever seen anyone? But I totally believe it. Once you got these dogs, a good one doesn't need training. You fucking throw them at the guy and they will attack. The genetics in this dog, the natural drive in these dogs is unprecedented to anything I've ever worked. I mean, where can you take a dog and just throw it at a guy and it's going to bite, hold on, and be aggressive? These dogs just naturally have it in them, And so that's really, been the big thing for me is, I've been a protection dog trainer. I've built up dozens of dogs for my own self, and I've trained, hundreds of dogs for other people that take months and years and years. And, are they really reliable? Is it just sport dogs? Are they real protection dogs? Will they really protect my family? You know, are they really going to protect your family? And so, you know, until I've been able to really recognize and see these Donovan Pinschers and see the difference, you know, and recognize the difference between a protection dog and a sport dog, and, you know, what that entails of how that dog behaves and how you train it or how you don't train it, because, you know, less is more, that, you know, people don't really understand the difference between a sport dog and a protection dog. Mm-hmm. You know, and these dog sports that we're all thinking are supposed to be the standardization to certify our dogs to be a protection dog, they end up doing more damage than anything. You put a good dog in one of these dog sports, they're going to be less likely to be able to protect you naturally and do it more proficiently. Yeah, a protection dog needs a little bit of, you know, training, right? But I mean, this sport training, I think, really, you know, does more harm than anything. You know?
Mm. I would agree.
So, yeah, I guess, you know, I think that's the one thing is just people need to educate themselves on, you know, what the old style of dogs were. You know, back about 30 years ago, there was, you know, a rule that everyone understood, that you don't touch another man's dog. You just don't. You see another dog, you don't touch it. You leave it. That's not your dog. Now, you know, dogs are being destroyed because, you know, someone goes up to some dog and expects it to be friendly. Right, and all these temperamented dogs that are the raw temperament are just continually being destroyed and sterilized and, you know, lost in history. Right? People need to be educated about what a real protection dog is and the difference between a sport dog. You know, one thing, I've been involved in French ring sport for like 14 years, and most people don't understand it, but the French ring sport was actually a circus act from France, a circus act. So it's in a ring, like a circus ring. That's what the ring comes from. It's supposed to be like a show, right? And things have changed so much. Same thing with Schutzen. It's supposed to be a breed suitability test, but, you know, we don't have that. It's not like it is anymore. It's been watered down so much, right? You can't take a seriously hard dog and throw it into a Schutzen field and, you know, hope it's not going to bite the judge and you're going to get a pass. Not, right?
A lot of people think because their dog excels in, you know, the sport world, it's like you could have all the trophies in the world, but that dog is probably more than likely going to cur out in a real street situation or home invasion situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I mean, I got, like, you know, a couple dogs. I want to have one dog that I know I'm not training or doing sport work with, because that's the dog I'm going to rely on at home. The dog I'm going to do sport work with is just for sport stuff, because I don't think it's going to be, you know, able to do everything you need it to, you know?
And how many dogs do you have now?
Dogs have been so watered down.
How many do you have now?
Hey? I got 5.
Okay. Now, what are some of the things? Yeah. What are some of the things you do to test your own dogs?
I drive to other cities that I'm not a resident of, so I can, if some kind of incident happens, I can get away, and I'm not going back to the city. My father always told me, don't shit in your own backyard, so yeah. I try to get my dogs to be agitated, you know, with people, against people at a young age. I socialize them with people, so they're neutral with people, they're comfortable, they're confident, and then I isolate them for some time, so they're not socialized. And then when I do take them out, I, you know, depending on the dog or what direction I want the dog to go, I will, you know, encourage the dog to be, you know, aggressive towards people at a young age, around, you know, 5, 6, 7 months old. And then, you know, continue to just do that. Go to places where, you know, the dog can see people and, you know, be aggressive towards them. You know, if you go to somewhere where there's, you know, people who aren't comfortable with dogs and they jump and they run away, it just kind of empowers the dog even more. And when the dog's a year old, I just, you know, throw them at a decoy and see what happens. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know, I'd rather not train my dog and just test them and see what happens, because then you really know the rawness of the dog and really know the temperament of the dog. If I'm training the dogs and conditioning them so much and building them up so much like I would sport Malinois, well, I'm not really seeing what the dog is. So I try to do, take Mr. Donovan's philosophy and say less is more. And you're able to see what the dog is. Mr. Donovan had so many dogs, he didn't have the time to train them. And when you got so many dogs, you don't have the time to train them. You just got time to test them. And when you got 5 dogs or 10 dogs or 15 dogs, you don't have the time to be, building these dogs up. And also, from a breeding perspective, you don't want to be building dogs up. And this breed of dog, it's not meant for that. It's not meant to be built up and trained up and take years and years of training like a German Shepherd or a Malinois. These dogs you throw in the situation and they're vicious. They're biting everything. They're not safe to be working, if they're not conditioned and trained for it. But that's a real protection dog. I'd rather my dog be biting multiple places on a person, doing as much damage on a person, than a dog that's going to be biting on one spot and only holding on to one spot. Because that dog's going to take a couple stabbings, take hits. It's not going to redirect on the weapon hand. I mean, you watch videos of, police dogs holding on to a suspect and he's stabbing the shit out of that dog. That dog's fucking dead. He's holding on to that other arm, but what use is that? You see videos of baubles in Namibia, Africa, and they're in some African compound, and some guys jump in there, and these baubles maul these guys, bite them everywhere. Well, these guys, their arms don't work. They can't hit the dog back. They can't kick the dog back because the dog just keeps redirecting on everything. What's a better protection dog, right? I think a dog that's trained less,
Sure.
But that's me, right? Yeah.
I can see what you mean. So, essentially, the Donovan Pinscher is a bull herder cross. Was there... Okay, so... What was the exact original cross? Was it Pit Bull to German Shepherd, Pit Bull to Malinois? How did that actually happen?
So Mr. Donovan's always wanted to be very vague with it, and he's never actually told the actual recipe. And even if anyone knows the recipe, they'd never be able to reconstruct it. It'd take 35 years of line breeding to do it.
Right.
So, but, I will say that there is no Rottweiler in the breed. There's no Akita. There's no German Shepherd. And there's no Doberman Pinscher in the breed.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's a few Mastiff breeds, Pit Bull, Dutch Shepherd, American Bulldog, everything all kind of swamped all in together. Mr. Donovan has wanted an open stud book for the standard. So this, is used by like the KNPV program, right? They have an open stud book. And I don't know if many of the listeners know what that means, but that means that if there is a dog from another breed of dog, it's not a Donovan Pinscher or it's not a KNPV Malinois, that they can contribute to the program, and that dog, those resulting crosses are then bred back to the main breed, the Donovan Pinscher, right? So that's still a case if there is an exceptional dog, and in order to open up and widen the gene pool a little bit, that's still a possibility within the breed. There was, when I first got involved with the breed, I bought a Dutch Shepherd to be used as an outcross in the program. And she was going to be used, and because Dutch Shepherd was a foundation breed, one of the 5 foundation breeds, and that would be used in order to, you'd make a cross, and then you'd breed back to the Donovan Pinscher, and breed back to the Donovan Pinscher, and it'd be 1/4, 1/8 Dutch Shepherd, right? So that has happened in as recently as 3 generations ago, in some cases.
Gotcha. So
yeah, there's also some proto dogs, which is like dogs that are Mr. Donovan has accepted into the program to be used as a contributing dogs. They're half and half, right? And if they qualify and they pass the tests, then they can be used.
Gotcha.
One thing I'd really like to try, if I could get something from this podcast, is that I'm trying to put a word out there for anyone who owns a Donovan Pinscher to contact the International Donovan Pinscher group on the Facebook and on the Instagram to let us know about your dog and to network with each other and just open up communications. I'd like there to be a possibility that everyone who's got some of these dogs can all kind of congregate and work and network together in order to try to preserve what we have and try to continue this breed into the future, and that this needs to be a collective effort, and that we need everyone on board, and that this program cannot sustain itself being controlled by one individual. And this breed has been fragmented many times due to personal issues within the breed, because people have gotten in personal arguments or whatever, right? And that's affected the gene pool. And so the breed has been kind of put in a delicate situation a few times in its history where our gene pools have been threatened. So I think if anyone who's listening who owns a Donovan Pinscher could consider trying to network and work together. I think it's every other week or every other month I hear about some new Donovan Pinscher we hadn't heard about that someone owns that wasn't on social media or didn't know there was some importance of its existence. And it would be great if people could start to network and work together and try to keep this breed alive and do some critical breedings and try to get these dogs into good homes. And we're not going to be able to keep the numbers up if we don't really start doing something as soon as possible. And I'd also like to try to, Mr. Donovan years ago had a breed suitability test. He had a few of them that he organized with a couple hundred people coming, all Donovan Pinschers, and everyone would test their dogs. And we'd all video it and see how the dog performed. And I believe that the Donovan Pinscher community needs a new breed suitability test, just to be able to, for all of us to know what we got, to share with the community what kind of dogs we got, and figure out what kind of breedings we can do for everyone to share genetics with, in order to keep this American breed alive. And I think I'm a Canadian, and as a neighbor, I think you guys should be very proud of this dog being developed in America. It's the modern American dog breed, and it stands with all the other working dog breeds, and in some cases it's better than them. You're going to spend $5,000 and $10,000 training a Malinois and have this personal protection dog, and you're going to walk in the ghetto and some pit bull's going to maul it to death. I know I could go anywhere and my dogs can hold their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that people need to be proud of this breed of dog and understand that the notoriety and the stigma behind the breed was really to try to destroy the breed and its credibility. If you don't trust the government and you're a little bit of a conspiracy theorist, you might be able to believe it. And
Right.
The powers that be don't want us to have capable dogs.
Mm-hmm.
All dog breeds, not just Donovan Pinschers.
Well, it's only a conspiracy theory until it's proven correct.